Hey guys, welcome to another episode of our Full Stack Hono series. And today is episode 3. We'll be looking at creating our first CRUD API using Hono. And the objective behind this is basically being introduced to building APIs using Hono. And we're going to be focusing on a task management API. So that basically just includes being able to create a task, update a task, um, delete a task, and read task. So I will share this information, but the reason why we are building an API is because APIs are essential to every sort of application, and so or like CRUD APIs. So being able to understand how to create, read, update, and delete forms a very crucial part of building an API. So that's why we're going to be looking at that. The lesson will sort of include like data handling, so managing data, interacting with the database, and applying logic to our Hono series. Key concepts we'll cover together would be how to set up your Hono application. So building off of the previous episode where we sort of built out the layout for Hono, we're going to just use that template and then build from there onwards. Um, we will see Hono in use in terms of its sort of lightweightness, how fast it is, that sort of thing. We'll be understanding the CRUD features a lot better. Something that's quite exciting is we're going to be interacting with the database as well. So that's something I'm looking forward to. Very high level from a project architecture point of view. We have our Hono app, which would basically just be our business logic and our APIs, and then we have the client, which is just like our HTTP request. So like your Postman being able to make requests and see responses, that sort of thing, and then lastly, we have our database layer, which basically just is the database, all the data that we have. We're going to be using SQLite for now, and the goal would be to then move over to like Postgres, like in the future. Um, Key features of our application would be being able to again create a task, so that's a post request, being able to get a task, which is a get request, being able to get a specific task, so get task one, get task two, being able to update a task, so update task one to complete or incomplete, and also just removing. So again, the full sort of like CRUD experience. So this is how it looks. And from a database point of view, this is how our table is going to be structured. So we're just going to have a task table, very simple table. That's our entity. We're going to have an ID. We're going to have a title for every task, and every task will also have a description and a status. Um, yeah, and then lastly, we just have the steps, how we're going to go about building it. We're going to set up our code base. We're going to create our routes. We're going to connect to our DB, and we're going to test our API out. So just from a technologies point of view, we have Hono, we have Drizzle ORM, we have SQLite, which is our database, Node.js is our server, Postman, or I'm going to use standard clients to just test my endpoints. So that sort of thing. Learning outcomes would be basically creating how simple, understanding how to create a CRUD API using Hono, understanding how to work with an ORM like Drizzle, and then testing and validating your APIs. And then we'll be able to, in the next episode, after we sort of code it out together, we'll be looking at adding some more features to it, like complex stuff like user, um, like assigned to kind of like tasks, that sort of thing, authentication, error handling, all of those sort of things. So looking forward to it. This is the outline, but I will share this as well. And yeah, let's dive into it.
Cool. Let's dive into the code section, right? So the first thing we're going to do is just create a .env file, which basically just is going to store our environment variables. And then we're going to just create and bake a database environment variable. And we're going to point it to our source db and local.sqlite. That's basically going to be the path or the where our database will be stored. And as you'll see here, I have created some folder structures. I've created a DB folder with the local.sqlite and an index file and the schema file. But before we get there, I want you to actually install some dependencies, right? So you will see here, there's better SQLite 3, there's .env, and there's a Drizzle ORM you need to install. So what you need to do is run yard add, and then you're basically going to do something like this, and then .env, and then Drizzle, Drizzle ORM. And then I don't need to install it because I have already. But once you run that command, it should get added here as your dependencies. And so you should have these dependencies added here. And the next thing we're going to do is we're going to actually update your scripts tag to include these commands. So your db generate will just generate the drizzle kit and generate our database migrates for any changes that we run on drizzle kit as well. So I have ran this already, but I will just walk you through it. So you're going to do something like this: yarn run db generate, and then that should just pick up any configs and say, okay, cool, it will add this table, these tables that you've added and stuff like that. So we'll see. But in the meantime, what's also important is you need a drizzle.config. This basically is the configurations for our drizzle. So here we're basically going to point to an output, which is just going to be a drizzle folder, which you'll see here. That should exist. It will be empty before, but when you run this command, it should then populate with stuff inside. Again, I have run it. I have run it already, so you will see stuff inside it. And then the schema also needs to be generated or rather created. So here you have a schema.ts. What the schema.ts file normally will do is it should include our schema, so the shape for our table. So that should be added here. And then after that, we can go to our index, right? What the index does is the index basically just initializes our database. So initializes the connection to our database. So it pulls in the environment variable. So here, and then we're basically saying a new database, and then that's going to be the path to our database. That just makes sure that it does exist, which is basically pointing to this here. When you run that, you can also just do migrate, and then migrate again just runs for any changes, listens for any changes. Once that occurs, it will tell you, okay, cool, there's nothing to do, or there is something to do as well. I will give a link to the documentation for more detail. Cool. So once that all happens, you should basically have your SQLite set up. Again, I have run it on my side, so things are working fine. When that runs, you will see your tasks table added, and then we know that everything is working fine as expected. So then the next thing we need to then do is we actually need to write some endpoints to access our database. But before we get there, I want to just show you this command. Drizzle Kit Studio basically allows us to run a server which interacts with our database, so we can actually view our data correctly or directly. So I will show you this later after we actually have data to display. But for now, since we have nothing it's running, we're basically going to just run our server and then write the logic to basically interact with our database, right? So let me do yarn dev, and then what I'll do is here in the index, basically we just have hello world. We just need to create some endpoints to CRUD our tasks. So we need to be able to create tasks, fetch all tasks, update and delete tasks as well. So what I'll do is I do have some code written out here. I basically will do this app get. I'll just do tasks. That basically should be to get all tasks. So it's going to be similar to this. So basically when I go to the slash tasks endpoint, I should basically fetch all tasks. So here, what I need to do is I need to basically fetch tasks. And how that will work is I have something like this. Just put this here. I need to call this async. And now I need to import these. Cool. So what this will then do is this basically goes to the database, right? And it selects everything from the task table, which is what we've defined here. And then it should just return all tasks. So if that is working fine, I can just test this endpoint to make sure that I can make requests. So HTTP localhost and then 5173. Sorry, 5173. This should just return hello world, which is fine. Now I want to do slash tasks. Should return an empty array because there's no tasks. Perfect. That's fine. So what we don't want to do is we need to be able to. This is fetching all tasks, but because there's nothing here, I'm gonna go off into Drizzle Studio and I'm gonna create a task and we're gonna test this endpoint to make sure that it actually works fine. So you won't see it now. I'll show you it afterwards, but I'm gonna just run Drizzle Studio on my side here. I'll show you how I'm doing that at the end. So let me do Drizzle Studio. Just need 1 second. I'll just create a task on my side for you to see. So I'm going to just add a record. I'll just say new task. And I'll just say new task. This is a new task. Sorry, you won't see that now. Save. Perfect. So now I'm gonna run this again, and then you should see new task. This is a new task. Perfect. So, but how we got there, I will show you right now. Before we get there, I'm just going to move on to the other endpoints as well. So, in fact, let me actually show you that now. Let me just pause this and switch it over.
Cool. So this is where I'm actually creating the tasks for now. I'm just going to go to add a record, and then that's going to get populated automatically, the ID. But I'm going to say this is the second task. And then description, this is the second. Oh no, let me do this. How do I edit it? Second task, and then this would be enter. This is the second task. And then I'm going to save it. And then there you go, boom. So now we have two tasks in our database. And as you can see, this is the Drizzle Kit Studio. This is basically a way for us to interact with our DB directly, but we're going to learn how to then go into our code and update it and stuff like that. So I'll switch back to the code and then we'll fetch and create and remove and stuff like that. But I can show you how we do it from here. So we can select, actually, I don't want to remove, I want to add another one. So let's say third task. And then here we have, this is the third task. Save, right? And then now what I want to do is I want to basically be able to update. So I can say third task update, as you can see. So this works perfectly fine. It should work perfectly fine. It's updating. We can also select and we can also delete. Um, so actually, let me delete the second one because I updated that one. So let me delete this just to show you that we can, from a database side, we can create, update, and delete. But now we then need to write code and logic to basically do what we're doing here. So this is fine. I'm going to pause this, go back to my code, and I'm going to fetch all tasks. And I'm going to show you two tasks that we have, new task and third task update. So let's do that quick. Great. So now we're back again. And we want to test the get tasks, and we need to see three tasks. So let me go here and let me just do this. And now when we make a request to our tasks endpoint, we should get, did I say three? I mean two tasks. We should get two tasks. One task called new task, and the second one is called third task. So it seems like it's working fine. Now what we're going to do is we're basically going to just write some logic now to basically complete the create tasks. Oh, look there. Copilot is doing it for me. um, this may be a bit wrong, but we can play around and change it and stuff like that. So using some AI. So what I have here is I have a get task. So let me do this. Let me just do this. So basically this is going to just be to get an individual task. I need to copy this from Drizzle kit to that. And then this basically is if you want to get like one specific task, we're basically going to ping this endpoint, and then we should just fetch that one task, and then we display it back to the user. Um, but the interesting one you probably care about is creating a task. So let's go here, and then let's create a post request. Now, post request basically just allows us to insert into our database. So what we're basically doing is say, okay, cool, I want to add a new task to my database, and part of the new task could be a title and a description. And basically, I'm passing that in, and I'm going to insert or add it to my table. So that should basically allow me to create. And then I'm going to also, I'll be testing this as well shortly with you. I just need to set up my environment for that. Um, and then I want to just do delete also, delete task. Uh, so basically what we're doing here, let me just go over this. We're taking the title and description, basically insert into our table, database, insert into our task table. We want to insert the value of title and description and want to return it. And let me just do this. This is going to be delete. So delete basically will take in a task ID that you're passing into the parameters. And then we're saying now, okay, cool, I want to delete from the task table. I want to find the task that matches this ID, and then I want to remove it. After that gets removed, we should have a successfully removed task deleted successfully. So just like a response that comes through from the server. Okay, that's perfect. Now I need to set up my postman so that I can make requests and we can create tasks, get a task and delete the task. So I'm going to just set that up real quick and then we will resume. Cool. Now that we've written some code, we just want to be able to make some requests to our API and test our CRUD. So without further ado, I want to just test to get that it works fine. So what I'll do is make sure that my server is running. Okay, it's running. I'm going to just get all tasks. I should get two tasks. Perfect. Boom. We've got that. Now I want to basically I want to get a task. So I'll just put the ID and I should be able to get task ID. Perfect. So now we can get all tasks. We can get one particular task. If we put in task 3, that's the one that is there. It should exist as well. So that's perfectly fine. And then what I need to do now is I want to do a post request and I want to basically create tasks. Task 4 is added. So we've added this endpoint. This is for task 4. Fingers crossed it works fine. Poof. Okay, cool. So we can we can add, we can view all, and we just need to test the delete now as well. And I just need to run update too. So let me now change this. Let me go back to tasks just to make sure that we can get all tasks. So cool. So we see the new one we've added. Perfect. So our API seems to be working fine. We can get all tasks. We can add tasks and we can delete. We should be able to test delete. So let me run changes to be a delete request and I'm passing the first one and then delete. Cool. So now if I get all tasks, boom, we've got two. Perfect. The last thing we need to do now is just to make sure we can update a task. So what I'll do is I'll go here and I'll just basically add this piece of code. And all this does basically again takes in a task ID that you are defining or giving it in the params. and then we now take in a new title, a new description, and a new status. We're then going to use that to basically update the task, the existing task that matches that same ID to now be updated to have new title, new description, new status, and then we're going to return it as well. So let me save that, and then this request is a put request, I believe. Sorry. So this is going to take in, let's say I want to update the task with the ID 3 to be, sorry, let me do this here instead. Put, because it already has it. I wanted to call it updated ID 3. So that's going to be the new title name. And then here we're basically going to call it, this is the updated task. And then send that. Cool. So the title is updated. So like a real world example of this can be maybe like a student basically has maybe changed their second name with their third name. And they're coming back and say, hey, I've got a new name, or my ID number has changed, or whatever. Maybe not ID number, but student name. And then basically we just say, okay, cool, I want to change the student's name from this name to that name. Maybe a more practical example can be they've passed from grade 5 to grade 6 and I want to change it on the system. But that's just an example of it. So that's basically our API. The next episode we'll be looking at extending our API so that we can basically add users now to our tasks, so we can basically assign tasks to users and that sort of thing. Okay, and yeah, so pretty exciting stuff. Looking forward to it, and looking forward to the next episode.